Hello, everyone. Hopefully, most of you have gotten connected to audio and can hear me, but welcome to our application walkthrough webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I will give everyone about a minute just to make sure that everyone's audio does get connected. If for any reason you cannot hear me, feel free to put that in the chat. We do have that chat for any questions throughout the application webinar. So feel free to put, in there even just to say hello, what part of the process you're maybe in at the time, if you're just kind of looking into information, or if maybe you have your application almost completed. But yeah, we'll give everyone about a minute here just to get connected, and then we will get started. Right. Does look like we have everyone's audio on my side. Looks like it is connected. So I'll go ahead and get us started here. My name is Brittany. I am the Assistant Director for the online program, for the online MSW program on the admissions side. I also have my colleague here, Jordan, who I'll let introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Jordan. I'm the Assistant Director on the residential MSW side. We're so excited to walk you through the application today.
Awesome. Okay, so we will go ahead and so essentially what this will look like is I'm going to have Jordan share the screen for the application. We're going to walk through each area of the application, each category that you'll be filling out for the application itself. We will show areas where you want to pay attention to online versus residential. So this is both for online or residential applications. We do have both open currently. And then any questions, like I said, that you have throughout what we're going through, feel free to throw them in the chat. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll go ahead and go through and answer those questions as they sort of trickle in. So as you can see here, Jordan is on the main page. So we have a lot of applications because we have a lot of test applications. Your portal will probably look a little smaller than that, but this is technically all of the applications that we have either submitted or in progress. So you would go into your portal, choose that application that you want to work on, and open it up. And this will take you to the main page. So this is where you're going to indicate your program of interest. So this is really online versus residential. So right now we have the online option there available. We do have two different track options for the online program. So you can do advanced standing if you're coming in with a accredited Bachelor of Social Work within the last 5 years, or if you just have a regionally accredited bachelor's outside of social work, that's where you would then choose the standard track. And as you can see, those two options do give you different options in terms of the total length of the program. If you have questions on the specific length options, what that would look like in terms of class load, time commitment, I would definitely recommend, taking a look at the website and also connecting with your admissions contact that you've been in touch with. They can kind of go over everything with you that would, fall under each of those categories. So you would choose, the option that you're wanting to move forward with. So in this case, we're choosing standard. We do have For that standard option, we do have the accelerated deadline as the one we have indicated there. That will always have an earlier deadline. So for right now, for online applications, we have our January applications open until November 29th. That accelerated option is not a possibility for the spring. It is a possibility for the summer or the fall, but not for the spring. And so if you're moving forward right now for the spring for the online program, you would be choosing either advanced standing or the 6 or 8 term option. And then for residential, we do have applications open for a next fall start. So that is an option technically as well. It's just not showing up right here with the one that Jordan's using. So we would go ahead and continue, which would essentially move us forward then into the personal background section.
So here on personal background, this is probably going to be the most familiar of the application pages. If you have done any type of application before, this should feel very similar to those applications. It's basically your biographic information. So if you use a prefix, you can put that there. You can put we'll need your full legal name, and then your legal last name. You can also put your preferred first name or other last name. So this is the test application, so has some kind of silly things there. But if you, for example, got married recently and you have you want to know that we might see your maiden name on some of your documents, you can put that there. If you have a nickname or a name you'd like to go by, you can put that there. Be aware whatever you put here on preferred first is what we are going to email you with. So if you say, oh, I'd like to go by my first full legal name, NA, then we're going to call you NA because you put that in that thing. So if there's not a preferred first name that you want to use that's different from your legal name, just leave this blank. But otherwise, you can put whatever you would like for us to call you when we're talking with you in that spot. Then we go down to your address. So we do have to have a permanent address on file for you to submit your application. And the reason we couldn't look at residential on this one is because this is technically a submitted application. But you will need to enter your permanent address here. If your mailing address, because we want to send you fun stuff, is the same as your permanent address, you can click this, or you can put in a different address here below. But we will need both of these. One, a permanent address is required to complete the application. And two, we do want to send you fun things in the mail, so provide a place for us to do that. You can provide your email, and if you ever need to change it, you'll just reach out and let us know. You will need to provide your telephone number. I know for a lot of people, we do not have a home line anymore. I know I don't have a home phone line anymore. Whatever, this part is required for the application. So if you want to duplicate that information, you can absolutely duplicate that information. So just put the same thing in both boxes. Or if you do have two different phone numbers you use, we'd love to see that. And if you want us to text you, I know that for a lot of folks, texting is a lot easier and faster than a one-on-one appointment or a phone call or even a Zoom visit. Then just click this yes, and that means that we will be able to text you, which is exciting. We'll need your basic biographic information here, like your sex, birth date, and birth country. Your religious preference. While we don't make admissions decisions based on your religious preference, we are a Christian school, and so this is information that we like to collect. We also need your citizenship information. This is very important because your eligibility to apply for online versus the residential MSW, as well as what your financial aid status looks like, can vary based on your citizenship. So if you have questions about that, you can absolutely let us know in the chat or connect with us. Just be aware that this needs to be updated and needs to be correct because it does have implications for which of our programs you can pursue and what your financial aid process looks like. And lastly, we just need your race and ethnicity information. Again, we are not making admissions decisions based on these qualities here. We just want this for our research purposes. You'll then be able to choose what specialization you'd like to pursue. If you don't know, you can leave it blank, and that's a-okay. You're also not going to be locked in forever. So maybe you're a standard applicant, you're coming in without your Bachelor of Social Work, you're not sure what the difference in clinical versus community practice is. That's okay. We do have a link to the descriptions of those specializations here, and whatever you put here will not lock you in for life. We are not going to say, gotcha, you have to be a clinical social worker now. If you take your first clinical class and you hate it, we're not going to look back to your application and say, oh, but you chose clinical practice. This is just so we can get an idea of what you're interested in and start sending you relevant information. And then if you are applying as a transfer student, so you're currently enrolled in a CSWE accredited Master of Social Work program at another university as a standard student, or you have been within one calendar year, this is where you'll let us know because we do have some transfer requirements as well. So once you do that, that's kind of the bulk of the application. Then we go into academic history.
Perfect. So in academic history, what we are going to be focusing on is any college or university that you've attended credits at. So that means even if you have graduated from Baylor University, but you attended a community college and those transfer credits are showing on your Baylor University transcript, we still need a separate transcript for that community college. So you just want to think about all the schools that you've been to, add them as institutions to this area. And as you can see, Jordan had kind of pulled up what follows once you do that. So you would pull up and search your school. Every school has a school code. And so the goal would be to try and find your school in this list. However, it's not always spelled thoroughly, completely through. So sometimes community college is CMTY college, COLL. Sometimes it's spelled that way. So if you don't find it by, starting to type it, I would say just see what pops up. There's typically a list you can look at and then search through the list. If you can't find the school that attaches to a school code, that's okay, not the end of the world. We can go in on the admission side and sort of manually change that for you so that way there's a school code attached to it. So as you can see, because we found that community college, it then populates the country, the city, and the state that that school is located in along with that school code. And then you would need to put in your dates attended, your level of study, and then it will ask you as well whether or not you have graduated, what your major was, if it was taught in English. All that information is needed for us to kind of have a full overview of that school that you have attended. Again, we always kind of go in and check everything on our side as well to make sure it's matching up with the transcript that is sent. I know sometimes maybe we haven't looked at our transcripts for a while, or we don't have, those transcripts handy and we're just requesting them to be sent from the school. Then at the bottom, you would have an area to upload your unofficial transcript for each school that you've attended. So the big thing to know is in the application phase of the process, we can accept unofficial transcripts. If admitted into the program, that's then when we would require official transcripts. An official transcript is deemed official when it is sent directly from the school that you have attended to us. So there is a specific email that you can send it to if you're sending electronic officials, and there's a specific mailing address you can send it to if your school does not offer electronic officials. But that's not something you have to worry about right away. I would say do keep that official request in mind if you are someone who is applying close to a final deadline for either of our programs. That would be important because that turnaround would probably be a little bit faster. We do need those final officials in order to clear you for registration. So sometimes we do have students that just request those officials right away in the application phase, but just know that we can move forward and review your application with unofficials. So if you're in a time crunch, sometimes it's easier just to get those unofficials in there and then request those officials, once we have everything that we need to review you. So you would just kind of go through each school and add it in there and then save it. And then that would prompt in your application eventually for those official transcripts if admitted. And then we'll go ahead and move into application essays.
So this is where we also use this opportunity to confirm that you're applying for the program that you want to apply for. So because on this application, I am listed as applying for the online Master of Social Work. Here, we're just absolutely confirming, yes, before I go any further, I am intending to apply for the online program. And I'll just click confirm. Here, you'll see that we provide the essay prompts. You'll notice that there's no submission box for these. It's because these will take more time. We want you to take your time on these, but we also don't want you to submit an application without knowing what these prompts are. So you'll see here that we provide the prompts. We provide how many word counts we want for each. So each one needs to be about 500 words, no less and no more. And you can start working on these once you get to this part of your application without submitting the entire thing yet. And again, we do this so that you have prior knowledge of the essay prompts. You can start working on them, but you don't have to have them to submit your application. And we're going to go more into the differences in submitting your application and your application being complete here in just a little bit. For our essays, we don't have any required fonts or styles. Truly write in a way that is true to you, that is using academic language. And there is one that requires or that asks for a citation. Cite this in the way that makes sense to you. As long as it's clear to us what source you're using and what you're citing, that's what matters. The only other thing I want to mention on the application essays is this additional factors for the admissions committee. So this is an optional piece of writing that you can write for us. And essentially it exists to give us context or things that you would like for us to consider when we are reviewing your application. I have seen tons of different responses for this part. So I've seen things as simple as, I love Baylor, sick 'em Bears. That's great. It's good to know. I have also seen it used, and this is what I would recommend using it for, giving context to what looks like a gap in your grades or a gap in your experience. So say that you are doing a career change and your transcripts have grades that are not necessarily that don't necessarily speak to who you are as a student or as a professional. I would use this piece to say, I've been out of school for 10 years. In that time, I've done a lot of growing. Here are the things I have been doing. Another great example that I like to use is that say that you broke your leg your sophomore year of college and you had to miss 3 weeks of classes and you got D's and F's in those classes. If I don't know that you broke your leg, I can make assumptions based on those D's and F's in that semester. But at the end of the day, all I have to go off of is those actual grades. And so to me, I don't know if you just didn't show up or what the story behind those grades were. I only have the grades. But if you then go into the additional factors for admissions committee and say, you'll see I have a lot of D's and F's in my sophomore year fall semester. That's because I broke my leg and my professors did not accommodate me and I missed 3 weeks of class. As you can see, my senior year, I got A's and B's. That tells me, okay, there was an extenuating circumstance that led to those grades and allows us to read your application more holistically, which is what our end goal is. And that brings us to the recommendation acknowledgement and recommendation letters.
All right. So this section is sort of coming before that recommendation section because this is where it is highlighting what three letter of recommendations are preferred based off of the track that you have chosen. So if you remember, we chose the standard track. So for the standard track, the preference is that you are requesting from 2 professional and 1 academic reference. And so if you had 2 professional and 1 academic, then you would just simply say yes and then continue. If for some reason, and this comes up quite often with students, mostly who have been maybe out of school for a little while, or sometimes if students have completed an online program, they just don't have maybe the same connection with that professor, that they would like for a recommendation. So if that is true, you can rely on 3 professional. That's typically the most common with the standard track applicants. So you would indicate no, and then you would put the reason as to why. So this isn't looked at negatively in your application at all. The goal is to pull from academic or professional. So what we want, especially in the standard application, is that you're pulling from 3 people who you feel can best represent you. So if that's 3 professional versus 2 professional and 1 academic, then that's totally fine. Now, the only caveat to this is for advanced standing students, it is a little bit more specific. You would actually be the preference would be for 2 academic and 1 professional, and those academic are a little less flexible. So one of those academic does need to be from your BSW program director, typically, or someone in your BSW program. So that's something that is not really flexible on the advanced standing side of things. I have seen sometimes students for the BSW advanced standing track use 3 academic. So that could be true for you potentially on that advanced standing track is the answer may still be no. And that's because you don't have maybe the professional and you want to rely on 3 academic. Again, that's totally fine. But for advanced standing, I would say that's really where the flexibility is not, but you do have to still pull from your BSW program reference for that 1 academic reference at the very least. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to let us know, but that's where you would then kind of move forward after indicating that. That takes you into the recommendations section, and this is then where you would enter those 3 references that you want to reach out to. Now, the application itself does stop you at 3 references. So sometimes students will have, maybe 3 to 5 references that they can pull from. You want to choose at first the best 3 that you want to reach out to. If for some reason one of those references doesn't come through, you can at some point remove them and enter in another 3rd reference by excluding them and then entering them in. So you're not necessarily locked into those 3 if anything needs to change. But initially, you would go ahead and add each recommender as you have them. As you can see, it'll have you indicate professional or academic. It'll have you go over their first and last name, the organization that they work for, their position and title, their telephone, and their email. The only thing that we're going to use on our side from the application is their email. So as soon as you save this contact in the system will send them out an email that will sort of transfer them to the portal where they fill out a form for you. So they're not necessarily uploading a letter, but they're answering questions that we will then see when we're reviewing your application. So if you want to kind of explain that to them as you're reaching out and going through the process, that's what it'll look like on their end. It will have you waive or not waive your right to access the report, sign off on it, and then as you can see, send a recommender is sort of that next step. So as soon as you enter all that information and click that button, they will have that email sitting in their inbox. Now, sometimes those emails do go to spam, so just tell them to keep an eye out for it. We can resend them to them. You can resend them to them. So anytime you jump back into your application, you can sort of choose to resend reminders to whoever maybe is still outstanding, or if for some reason they didn't get the email, you're able to do that as well. But you also be able to keep track on who has submitted. So when you log back into your portal, you'll be able to see, so-and-so has completed it and this other person has not. And then that's where you could then choose to send a reminder if needed. And then once you're done with all of that, we can move forward into really the end of the application. So this takes you into the signature section. As you can see, this is you just signing off that everything that you have uploaded and filled out and completed is accurate. So Jordan put their name in there. We're going to sign off on it. This was already a submitted application like we had mentioned, so we could take you to the submitted portal, but it will kind of indicate the date that you're signing it. You continue. Because we have some things here that we didn't fill out, though, this is where it would alert you of that. So if there's anything that you missed or anything that you didn't fill out as thoroughly as needed, it will alert you to it here. You'll be able to click back into it and then, complete that section before pushing it through to that final submit stage. There we go. Okay. And then this takes us to the portal.
So this is the beautiful, lovely status portal. You can tell this is a test file because it has a lot of fun things on it that don't really match. But we talked earlier about the difference in hitting submit on your application and completing your application. So over here is where you're hitting submit on your application. Then usually within anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, you're going to receive information to set up a Bear ID and access to this, which is your home base for all things going forward. And it is going to show you all of the things, going to show you your account and your application, what degree you're applying for. It's going to link you to resources, tell you the status of your application. It has a beautiful thing like this that tells you where you are in the process. So right after you submit your application on the other screen, you'll get the little check application submitted. Because this app technically has a fake decision on it, you don't get to see it, but there is a cute little bear that goes along this little timeline with you. But I think the main thing to point out here is this checklist. So this is a live checklist, and it is going to update and say received when we receive your documents. So if you ever have any questions or you're wondering if we've received this, that, the other, you can go to your status portal and see very quickly, okay, they have my transcript. They don't have my FAFSA, but that's not required for admission, so I can wait on that. Looks like my reference from Gooberville Incorporated is still outstanding, and if I need to send them a recommendation, a reminder, I can do so here. And if we need something additional from you, we can add that to your checklist here. So say that I called my admissions counselor and I say, I see that I'm still awaiting a transcript that I already uploaded. And my admissions counselor looks at my transcript and goes, you actually need a transcript from McLennan Community College. Or if I'm an international student, you actually need a WES evaluation. If we determine that's the case and you have an additional requirement based on what we have already received from you, that will show up on your checklist as well. So when in doubt, check your status portal, check it often, and check that checklist. This is also where you're going to be able to submit your application essays. So like I mentioned, you see the prompts when you submit your application. Excuse me, here in the status portal is where you will actually copy paste those prompts over. And you'll see, again, I put in some nonsense, but these are just text boxes that you go in and you add your information to. So you can copy paste from wherever you're writing your essays into those submission fields. You'll also submit your general information form here, which just confirms a few of those application items and is part of the application at whole or at large. If you ever need to upload something, you can see the different things you can upload here and then upload them right here in the portal. And if you ever have a question, you're thinking, who is the right person for me to reach out to? We tell you, so you'll be able to see who your assigned admissions representative is here, sign up to meet with them, to email, all of the great things. We also have profiles for our faculty and staff, so you can start to get to know who we are here at the Garland School, get more information about financial aid, and follow us on Instagram. So the status portal going forward, after you hit submit over here, this is really going to be your home base for all things Baylor MSW until you're here as a student and integrated into our student systems. But I think, Brittany, unless you have anything to add, that's really the application process.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a very thorough overview of everything. So if you need us to go back and show anything, feel free to put it in the chat. But feel free to we'll kind of go through the chat here and see if there's any questions that we didn't answer yet. But feel free to put any additional questions into the chat box, and we'll try and go through some of these questions here.
I do see one right away asking about a fee waiver. So the online application does not have a fee, so no need to worry about that. For residential, we do have a fee of $45. However, because y'all are here today in this Zoom, anyone applying to the residential MSW will get a fee waiver code, and I'm going to put it in the chat. It is GSSW 25. So enter that on your application, and that will waive that $45 fee for you.
Perfect. Yeah. And we have some questions around application deadlines for 2025. So if you're completing the online MSW application, we do have applications open for January, May, and September. However, the deadlines that you're going to see on the website right now are pertaining to January specifically. So the November 29th deadline is for January specifically. That doesn't mean that you cannot submit your application for May or September. We review applications on a rolling basis for the online program. And so with that in mind, we can still send your application off for review for any of those 3 start dates and get you a decision back. I would say typically in about 2 to 4 weeks. If you're applying for January, that window is kind of slowly closing in terms of the turnaround decision timeframe, as we do have deadlines that we're trying to meet for, signing and paying your deposit if admitted, and then registration, being open and starting classes, obviously, here in January as we're kind of slowly and quickly moving towards the end of the year here. So, and then the residential program does have applications open for fall of 2025, so I can have Jordan speak to those deadlines as well.
Absolutely. So our next upcoming deadline is February 1st for residential, and that's for a fall start, which would be happening, I think, the second to last week or last week of August. Usually our first day of class is within that last week of August. If you are an international student interested in the residential MSW, your last application deadline is also February 1st. So we do have other deadlines in the spring. However, I would encourage anyone who is interested in the residential MSW program to complete that application by February 1st. One, because if you're an international student, you have to. That still allow you plenty of time to get your visa ducks in a row. And 2, because you are guaranteeing the maximum consideration for financially possible for the residential program. After February 1st, it is the standard process, but applying early can get you more access to financial aid than applying later. So all of that to say, February 1st is where you want to be for the fall 2025 residential MSW start.
Yes, if you're wanting to start in the fall, you can submit the application now. I typically recommend if you know you want to get started, you know you want to apply to Baylor, and that application is open, get it in, get it completed, get that decision back. That way you can start planning for that, sort of phase of your life and timeframes around that.
Great. Well, if anyone has any specific questions about residential, I'll go ahead and put my contact information down in the chat. But if you don't have questions, then feel free to hang out or to go about your day. But we're so thankful that you joined us for this application walkthrough.
Yes, and I will put my calendar link in there as well. I know that Erin had put hers in there, so feel free to schedule with either of us. We both represent the online program. But if you have any specific questions, we always like to connect with students as they're going through their application. Make sure, even though there's information on the website, that you're understanding what that time commitment looks like. If you're planning to work while in the program, what that balance can look like, what the practicum component looks like. So there's a few different things we like to touch base with students on before they complete their application. That way we can make sure it's the best fit on both sides. Jordan, I think we had one more question. Okay, just want to make sure you saw it.
Yes, so I was typing a response, but you're not guaranteed a graduate assistantship position. However, applying by February 1st will put you in the group that gets priority access to the GA application. The only reason it's not guaranteed is because it is an application process. So we do try to match students with the GA position that makes the most sense for that student. So while I've never seen anyone not get matched, just know that it is not a guarantee and it is an application process. But you would be considered within the priority group for that uh, application access.
And as we are on the topic of webinars, we do have a Dean discussion webinar coming up next week. It is on the webinar website, so feel free to register for that. It will likely be it'll be a little shorter, so it'll likely be about a 30-minute webinar where we'll have our Dean come in and speak about social work as a whole, kind of, where social work is moving towards, in the coming years. So always recommend if you can come in and listen to any of the webinars that we offer outside of the application focus. It's always helpful to kind of just get a little bit more insight into Baylor and also insight into the social work profession as a whole. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to let us know, but that sign up should be on the webinar website, just like you would have signed up for this one. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, feel free to throw it in there if you have any last minute needs. But if not, we'll probably wrap up a couple, I guess, about 20 minutes early, um, give you a little bit of time back in your hour. But again, feel free to schedule some time with us. Just know that any of the webinars that we offer that focus on the program or the application, we can do that with you one-on-one. So we try and reach a bigger audience with these webinars if, it's harder maybe for students to schedule one-on-one time. But if you are not able to attend, or you have maybe missed some of the webinars we've had in the past, just feel free to schedule some time on any of our calendars for the program that you're interested in, and then we will give you a call and kind of just go over everything step by step like we would in a webinar. So that totally works just like a webinar would. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and have a good rest of your week. Bye-bye.